Welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today I'm joined by the politics editor over at the Daily Signal, Bradley Devlin. Welcome, friend.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to see you.
Yeah, of course. So, politics editor, how'd you get here?
Oh, I started out as a analysis reporter over at the Daily Caller, right as
Same.
the summer of love and COVID-19 was kicking off.
Of course.
Made my way to the American Conservative because I wanted to get more into the activist journalism space, do more magazine writing, and made the move over here in August. And I oversee our congressional reporting team and kind of work on the day-to-day curation of how we cover politics here at the Daily Signal. We're right across the street from Capitol Hill, which makes my life very easy. We work out of the Heritage Foundation building. And of course, I have my show on the side, The Signal Sit Down, and that's basically the inside baseball of what's going on the right, because that is something that, as this show's entire premise, right, the beltway publications of Politico, Punchbowl, etc. Well, they don't understand the right, and so whenever they try to report on it, they do a terrible job at explaining the dynamics of the Republican conference in the House and the Senate, and that's what we try to do. We try to correct the record and give conservatives their fair shake and their time on camera.
It's so funny you say that, because the big news outlets, sometimes I'll like be watching a press briefing and I'll see Joy Reid say something like seriously the dumbest thing you could ever possibly say. And yeah, it annoys me and it irritates me and it obviously goes really viral. But the actual written out news, which I spend probably an hour to an hour and a half every morning reading, that pisses me off more. Like, if you spend a minute on my Instagram stories, literally every morning I'm like, Politicos have this stupid ass shit. I'm like screaming at my phone. It's every single day. They're literally nuts. But this segues so perfectly into the first story I wanted to talk to you about today, because the White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, it feels so good to say her name instead of CRINGE on Pierre, but she announced that the White House new initiative is going to bring in bloggers, TikTok creators. We are going to have a seat in the White House press briefing room. Let's take a listen to her real quick.
We also, again, encourage anybody in this country, whether you are a TikTok content creator, a blogger, a podcaster, if you are producing legitimate news content, no matter the medium, you will be allowed to apply for press credentials to this White House.
That's pretty badass, if I do say so myself.
Are you going? Did you apply?
I did apply. I did. And I heard that I don't know if I ever told you this. Daily Signal was my first internship. Like, Daily Signal was my foray into what I do now. I was just informed yesterday that you guys had your press credentials taken away from the White House last year?
Yeah. The Biden administration decided to axe nearly 450, I believe, press credentials from the White House. We were amongst those publications. The Trump administration has restored our credentials, so our guys get to be in the room now, and they should be, because you have legacy media outlets, and increasingly people are turning away from those outlets. They're going to watch shows just like this one. They're going to read, on social media, our coverage, whether it's in a tweet thread form or it's an article or it's a video or a short or whatever it is, right? More and more Americans are turning to outlets like the Daily Signal and other resources to get their news. They're not relying on the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, even Fox News. Yes, it's big, it's corporate, and people are sick and tired of that in that medium, because you don't get to actually air the issues. You're given 30 seconds. And that's why I like doing podcasts like this one. Like, how useful is a 30-second soundbite if you're actually trying to learn something? Usually not that much.
No, I know. And usually you're just agreeing with the host, right? Like, I would, in an ideal world, love to do what Scott Jennings does and, like, sit down and actually talk to people. But even then, it would be so much more productive for society to put him and the rest of the Abby Phillips crew on a long form podcast so that people can actually hash it out and actually talk about it, instead of just yelling at each other for 30 seconds and then we got to cut to ads. Like, so dumb.
Yep, here's the pharmaceutical ads. And then we'll be right back with this non-substantive conversation in 30 seconds, which is exactly the problem, right? Like, Abby Phillips has, 9 guests or whatever on her show, and they're supposed to get through 8, 9 topics in the course of an hour. It's just not conducive to a media environment that actually looks out for the best interests of the people, that actually is trying to seek some sort of good political ends. And that's kind of I think the premise of a lot of these new upstarts is like, even though it might be in short content form, let's say on TikTok, there's always an avenue to a Substack, or there's always an avenue to a longer form YouTube video where people are gobbling up all these long form conversations because they're sick and tired of the corporate media telling them what they can and cannot believe, and the conversations they can and cannot listen to.
Yeah, I know a lot of, if not every single person that is on this channel watching this show is because I blew up on TikTok. I mean, it's a great avenue to do that, but this might be a little wonky for the audience. So let me know in the comments, guys, if this is too wonky or if you're actually interested in this. But I have noticed, Bradley, that there has been really a shift from even the leftists in corporate media are now starting to come to, like, Semaphore is a really popular outlet on the left right now. I mean, they kind of have like some bipartisan people. They have some of our old colleague at the Daily Caller, Shelby Talcott. Like some people are kind of coming over there. But I've been reading the morning news on the left, and it's a lot of this person from NBC is now at a smaller news outlet on the left. Even the left is having kind of their own version of scaling down and getting away from corporate media.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon to see, like, the left knowing that their cultural cachet is dying, and so they need to do something to reinvigorate it.
Yep.
And I think these are going to be like the first joiners, right? And these are often people who are sometimes pushed out of these legacy left-wing outlets. Like, The Intercept has always kind of been fringe on the left, but not really. And Glenn Greenwald is like an early trailblazer in this space, right? Like, completely kicked out of The Intercept when it started to, like, I don't know, shill for the Democratic Party, and you know, kind of lost its way on the civil rights issues that Glenn Greenwald is so animated by. And so what did he do? He left, and now he does Rumble and social media, and I think he's more powerful than he's ever been, even though, you know, the intelligence community hates him for the Snowden story, and the left thinks that he's doing too many things to be buddy-buddy with Tucker Carlson. I mean, it's kind of remarkable to see what these people actually believe when they leave corporate media, especially if they're on the left, and they're, you know, you can tell that they're kind of re-energized by the prospect of being independent, or at least being at a place where there's not as many guardrails, where there's not as many HR people knocking down your door and saying what you can and cannot say on air, dealing with colleagues who are oversensitive, etc. Like, these people just get to go on camera like we are right now and kind of freeball for a while. And you learn something new about these people, right? I think an interesting conversation that we've heard over the last year and a half, 2 years, was like Tucker Carlson on TCN sitting down with Chris Cuomo. Like, that's way different than anything.
Didn't he just sit down with Eric Adams too?
Oh yeah, great interview.
I have to watch it. I have to watch. I fasted podcasts as part of this, like, prayer and fasting I decided I was going to do at the beginning of the year. And now all I do is consume double the rate of podcasts because I have to catch up on everything, of course.
Yeah,
really
best laid plans, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I do want to get to another kind of media adjacent controversy that's taken center stage on X in the past few days. And there is this article published in the New York Magazine, and not to make like everything about me, but I was at this party that is at the center of this story. Were you at this Power 30 party at inauguration weekend?
No, and thank God I wasn't, because I know that CJ was helping organize and put this on, and I was like, yeah, I should go, but then I was like, no, I'm not gonna go because my in-laws were in town. And then all of a sudden, like, of course, a week later, I hear murmurs that, like, there's gonna be some New Yorker article coming out, or New York Magazine article coming out about it.
Yeah.
And it was glorious. I love reading it.
The title of it was "The Cruel Kids Table: Out Late with the Young Right as They Contemplate Cultural Domination." And what was really controversial about it wasn't even the stupid article, like, who cares what the New York Magazine has to say about us? What was so interesting is that people who were at the party, like, we noticed that the party was very racially diverse, but New York Magazine had picked a picture of all white people. But the party was thrown, you said, by CJ Pearson. He's black. Headline performer, Waka Flocka Flame. I think you guys can do the math there. The New York Magazine also had in the article an interview with my friend Xavier Geruso, who is also black, and they failed to mention that. And I think it was just so funny because the night was about people of all races coming together to celebrate Trump's victory, but the media is trying to black this out or white this out. I don't know.
No, it's funny to see the media trying to grasp for ways to frame right-wing aesthetics right now negatively. The cover looks awesome. The photos looked awesome. Compare that to, I think, a phenomenal piece by James Pogue in Vanity Fair, about the
Yes.
DNC, how like the vibe at the DNC and at these various parties before they lost in November, some of like kind of front of the class, kind of like theater kid smarminess
Yes.
that no one wants anymore. And I think like the aesthetics of the right now are like the theater kids are no longer in control. Patriots are in control and a bunch of normal people. And what does normal look like nowadays? Like, it doesn't necessarily look like the normal that we were used to in the 1980s. I know there's a 1980s reference somewhere in the New York Magazine piece. It's not like white picket fences and polo shirts, though they certainly have their place. It's kind of like, this is a nation in decline. It's heavily urbanized. And so the movement's aesthetic is going to reflect where like the drivers of the movement are coming from. And they're coming from growing up in, let's say the early 2000s, late 90s, kind of peak decadence of globalization. And then it's going receding back into, wars on terror, global financial crisis, etc. All these things that we talk about when we talk about American decline. And what do you get as the product of that? Like, you get highly educated urbanites who are invested in restoring the country. And when one of the political parties is pitching you on, hey, let's not rock the boat, let's keep things status quo, and you have no hopes of owning a house because mortgage rates are 7%,
Preach.
like, where are you going to gravitate towards? Like, the party that's saying, we don't want this anymore, let's do something different, let's usher in a golden age. And so, yeah, there is kind of that Art Deco aesthetic of the whole thing that I think ties together decline with like modern aesthetics, social media aesthetics, and this hope of rising from the ashes that we've experienced over the last 30 years of American decay.
You've also really hit it on the head when you're talking about how it's not just a cultural phenomenon in like political culture, but also just generally it's seeping into all aspects of culture. I was watching a video on, I think it was like in like home trends and what's trendy this year, and a lot of people were saying that color drenching, ornate, like gold frames, really bringing back color and warmth to spaces is very 2025. Whereas we've been in the last 6 to 10 years of like the millennial cold white, everything must be modern and edgy. It's just like very boring and sad. And again, to your point, a nation in decline, and this feeling of something so simple as interior design to be warmed and changed with the culture. I just think it's seeping into all elements, and I'm totally here for it. But in the name of time, I do want to get to our docket. So we have a couple stories today, guys. We have Ben & Jerry's putting out an insane video marketing itself as a leftist activist company. I thought they just sold ice cream. We also have more stories pouring out about what the federal government has been spending taxpayer money on for the last 4 years. And yes, I heard you guys, you want to talk about Selena Gomez's meltdown, so we're going to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Today's show is brought to you by Based, my merch line, and we've just unveiled our winter line with a new beanie, a hoodie, a shirt, and a tote bag. I'm an independent creator, and one of the best ways, if not the best way, to support this show is by purchasing my merch line that represents your views. Instead of just asking you guys for donations to fund my independent journalism, my business partner and I created a line of merch called Based Apparel. Based basically means the opposite of woke. It means you're based in logic, based in truth, based in facts. You get it. Anyway, head over to basedandlogicapparel.com to check out our latest apparel. My personal favorite right now is our Based two-tone shirt, which I'm wearing right now. And remember, when you buy merch, you are directly supporting this show. And when you get your apparel, please be sure to tag me on Instagram so I can repost. Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream company, put out this super cringe ad announcing that they're not just an ice cream company, they're an activist company. Let's watch this video together.
Stick to ice cream. Not gonna lie, we get this one a lot.
Yeah, we're in the ice cream business, but we've always been about much more than just ice cream. We use our power, our privilege, our platform, and our relationship with our fans to advocate for progressive social change. So no, we're not just going to stick to ice cream.
And we're never gonna stop trying to dismantle white supremacy and the climate crisis and fight for our democracy.
And no, we're not going to stop fighting laws that restrict trans rights, ban books, and roll back abortion protections.
caring about that stuff, doing something about it, and supporting communities who've been directly impacted by it is part of our DNA, and it has been since we opened up our first scoop shop in Burlington, Vermont back in 1978.
Can I get a who cares?
I
Why do they do this?
God bless that woman who's in the video. You know that someone is totally not media trained and should not be in that position when they're walking and they're doing the hand. They wave their hand back and forth as they hold it to their side because they're telling you something and they've never actually been on camera before. And so even in their ad about how we support diversity hires, they had a diversity hire. You can tell the guy was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more trained. Oh, it's thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate this.
It's so true. But I've been seeing calls all over social media, no matter, I couldn't even tell you a platform, that we need to start giving them the Bud Light treatment. I don't know if I agree with this one. What do you think?
Why not? Why not give them the Bud Light treatment? I mean, I think one of the crucial parts of that ad is they say, I don't know if you actually played this part of it, but the full ad, they say something like, well, we're not leading from the front. You know, we're actually just propping up a bunch of these organizations. And
Yes.
over our very nice friend who has the hand motion, you have a banner of all these different nonprofits and NGOs, among them the ACLU, Amnesty Now, et cetera, and all, right? Like all these different left-wing organizations. And that's the crucial thing, right? Like whenever a corporation embarks on some sort of efforts to, enact progressive policies, or even if it's just any sort of social change, right? When a corporation goes into that space, well, Americans actually kind of approve of that, but they don't approve this type of crap, right? Like we just saw that in the November election. Like I'm tired of the ACLU labeling everything hate speech and then trying to get people kicked off the internet. I'm tired of that stuff. And so I think it's important for conservatives to keep in mind that the conservative position isn't to just say, shut up, Ben, shut up, Jerry, sell me ice cream. It's to create the cultural momentum and cachet so that when our nice friend with the bad hand motions goes back on camera someday, it's Ben and Jerry is supporting a bunch of really pro-America causes, and it's all these different conservative NGOs atop the screen, right? Like that should be the conservative project. Just saying, stick to ice cream, ignore everything that's going on in the world. Well, that's like not actually a way that we create an economy that functions well for American families, right? If you are a corporation, we don't want the government involved in making you do things for the betterment of society. But hey, maybe it is smart for you to pay your workers a good wage. Maybe it is smart for you to get involved in your communities on the local level. Maybe it is smart to pay back the country that's giving you these types of profits. And so, like, don't buy the libertarian line on this where I just want Bud Light to sell me beer and them to sell me ice cream. I don't think we live in a world where that's actually possible anymore, especially with how much social media marketing has come into all of this. You're going to have some sort of social engagement by corporations, and we should make sure that it's for the right side, for the conservative side.
I've actually never heard that argument been made. That's really interesting. I do have a little bit of a pushback, though. I think that a lot of the times when people say, just sell me ice cream, they don't mean just sell me ice cream. They mean pick a cause that the majority of people can get around. Like almost everyone can get around wounded veterans or humane society. You know what I mean? Like get involved in something that is doing good for good. I think a company that's done a pretty good job of that is Subaru. Yes, we all associate them with your butch lesbian in the neighborhood, but other than that, like that's not their doing. They're doing good, like giving school supplies to kids and whatnot. That to me, I'm like, that is what people actually mean when they say shut up and sell me ice cream. Shut up about your insane causes and put your money towards something that we could all get around. But I have to say, this was my first reaction when I saw Ben and Jerry's like sticking to their political guns. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 2025 has been this like shift towards we're not getting as politically active, right? I just generally speaking, the companies are like they're scaling back on DEI, they're scaling back on all their political activity, and they're just trying to like exist and do exactly what I'm saying, like, oh, we're gonna give to the Humane Society or something like that. But I just couldn't stop comparing what was happening to Ben and Jerry's with like millennials in their skinny jeans in 2019. Like they revolted. They said, I will keep my skinny jeans. I'm going to keep my side part, right? No matter how ugly it is, that's fine. Ben and Jerry's is sitting over here saying, I don't care if it's not cool to be a political leftist. We're going to stick and do it no matter how cringy we are. I don't think I'm wrong there.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like if they want to be cringe, have at it, man. Be cringe. You're right about when people say just shut up and sell me ice cream. Like just don't do something that's trying to force, transgenderism in my schools and
Please.
to like stop telling my daughter on the carton of ice cream that she should abort her child. That's like pretty basic, right? But this is the difference between the folk libertarianism that kind of defines this populist moment on the right and the actual libertarians that you come across all the time in this town that I'm in, Washington, D.C., right? Like the libertarians will be like, actually, there should be no interest whatsoever by corporations in the good of society, where everyone, I think, every normal person basically agrees this is just a natural function of human institutions. Like they're going to get involved in things beyond their, let's say, like direct purview. And, Alexander Hamilton writes about this in the Federalist Papers. This goes all the way back to the classics, Polybius, Aristotle, etc. Like, hey, actually, if you found a republic or an empire on pure commercialism, it will be rotten from the inside out, and it won't actually effectuate any of the good. So even if your highest good is wealth, if you predicate your society on that like ruthless pursuit of acquiring more and more and more, well, what's the other like vice of wanting to acquire more? It's theft, right?
Yeah.
And so what you'll get is a population that wants to acquire not only everyone else's things, but each other's things so much that it will just devolve into chaos and anarchy, and there's no other higher good above that. And that's like the conservative point here, is that what is the good that we're going to reach for here? Is it actually the common good, or is it one of these other secondary purposes? And the nanny state, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, right? They're really good at substituting virtue in the highest political goods, right? Your pursuit of Christ, your pursuit of God, religion, for some other good. So what that's health is a big one. Wealth, of course, another one, and security, right? Security, you get the Patriot Act, you get NSA spying on people. Wealth, we just talked about that one. That one's pretty self-explanatory. And health, right? We see it today with whether it's misguided tech bros who are talking about downloading consciousness or whatever Joe Rogan is talking about today, or massive expenditures for healthcare by the federal government, making sure that you have every little need catered to without requiring any sort of change in behavior. And that's what we saw at RFK's hearing, where Democrats were saying, is healthcare a human right? That was Bernie Sanders' question. RFK is like, you can't make me answer that in a yes or no question. It's a way different right than something that you and I might be discussing when we're talking about the right to free speech.
Absolutely. Oh, those hearings, I just started like rewatching some of them because sometimes they go through your ear and you're just like, okay, I know I'm hearing things, but I need to like sit down and listen to it instead of listening to it passively in the background. And every single time, without fail, women always look the craziest they've ever looked at these hearings. I mean, just yelling, spitting. I'm almost embarrassed by my gender.
That is so funny that you mentioned that, because I realized today, like, I was having a terrible time watching these hearings. And I realized in my office, like I have a TV in my office, I kept unmuting it only when female Democratic senators started asking questions, because I knew, you know by looking at these people, by their public profiles, that like they're going to say something insanely stupid, but I'm just a little glutton for punishment. So I click on the mute button and I start listening to Elizabeth Warren yell at me again. I don't know why I keep doing this. I need to get out of this longhouse.
It's like an abusive relationship. You just can't leave it.
That's right. That's right.
All right, I gotta get to our next story. So, long story, guys, but we have been covering this in Tuesday's episode. So if you want more on this, go back, watch the other day's episode. It'll give you more information. But a judge has halted a Trump executive order that temporarily froze all these federal, foreign, and domestic aid programs. These are pretty pointless programs, a lot of them. And the ones that aren't they're going to be perfectly fine. They're going to stay in place. And there's been a lot of misinformation, and I say that seriously, not rolling my eyes. Seriously, a lot of misinformation about how student loans are no longer going to exist. That's been a thing going around on TikTok. No, you morons, okay? SNAP benefits, student loans, programs like that, individual programs are not impacted. We're talking about the most unnecessary, pointless programs. We heard about it the other day when we were talking about 15 million being spent on birth control pills to the Taliban. Karoline Leavitt announcing that there was $50 million being spent on gynecological issues for women in Gaza, okay? And today we have another example of why this executive order is incredibly necessary. The federal government is spending $250,000, taxpayer dollars, to celebrate Transrural Americans. And if you're like, Chrissy, what the fuck are Transrural Americans? These are people who live in rural areas and identify as transgender. And we need to spend $250,000 to digitally storytell their stories. What in the world did I just say, Bradley?
I have no idea what the hell you just said. This is how you turn any sort of argument in the future. I know that there was a pause by the federal judge, and then of course the Trump administration has rescinded the OMB memorandum that is now so very infamous. When I read the memorandum, I think the only problem is that it was missing a comma. So this is how you turn the debate back on people who say, oh my gosh, President Trump is pausing all this federal funding? Yes. Why? Because we're spending $250,000 on Transrural lives, because we're spending all that money on all the things that you just mentioned. The Department of Education during Biden's presidency spent over $1 billion on DEI programs. Of course, this is where the movement against DEI and transgenderism started. It was in schools, it was on school boards, it was right in our backyard in Virginia where this all started to happen. And then, of course, you have the Pentagon. The Pentagon spent about $15 million over the last 5 years on transgender health care for its service members. That's not something that the DoD should be doing. And of course, President Trump and whatever Pete Hegseth decide to do with this type of healthcare is going to be well-founded, because last time in the Trump administration, we had that, no longer is the Department of Defense going to be a landing place for transgender individuals who want to receive gender reassignment surgery. That's just not what the DoD is meant to do. They would be right to act on that, and they will continue to act on that basis. And so this, I remember I was on News Nation the other night. News Nation, love the network. There was this other guest on my panel that said, Bradley really needs to answer, President Trump really needs to answer for taking formula away from single mothers just trying to feed their babies.
Lies.
That's what they said. Out of the other side of their mouth, they said they have no idea what programs this memo or this pause on federal funds would affect. So what is it? Are we starving children, or do you have no idea what this actually affects? And when you actually get down to it, right, when you look at how much money we waste on DEI and left-wing initiatives and left-wing nonprofits, the American people, even though many of these people are in poorer red states that are served by all sorts of different NGOs, they know that this has become a runaway bureaucracy that hides money from the American people, that hides money from the taxpayers, and gives it to a bunch of left-wing organizations. So if that means that I'm going to have to pause federal funding for maybe an NGO or an institution that benefits me so that I can be sure my taxpayer dollars are being spent in a responsible way, that is absolutely a trade-off anyone on the right now would make. Right? Anyone who entered this coalition in November.
Too. There are a lot of people on the left that would think this too. I know we create this what's it called? Magical creation, I guess. I can't think of the word. It starts with an A. Or an enigma, maybe something like that. It sounds like that. I can't think of the word right now. I feel like but people, try to make these, blue-haired baristas out to be like the entire left. The left does not want to be spending our money on this crazy stuff either. Like the normal liberals in this country, they don't want that either. In fact, they are up in arms about this, and they just say it in a different way. They just don't like that it's coming out of Trump's mouth. We saw that with Luigi Mangione and the way that the left reacted to that. They want our money to be spent on things that actually matter to them. And we can debate whether healthcare is a right or abortion is something that we should be spending federal tax dollars on. That's fine, but they want it going to something at least somewhat practical like healthcare, as opposed to the crazy ass things we're spending money on.
Yeah, I think I misspoke earlier by saying the right, because so much
No, you're
of
good.
the win in November for President Trump was off the backs of a new coalition, right? We've heard about the multiracial working class coalition, but it had a lot to do with one guy that we saw in front of the Senate very recently, Bobby Kennedy, right? This heterodox left-wing individual, former Democrat, who came into the Trump campaign, who endorsed President Trump after an independent run for president, because they could find common ground on all this stuff that we were just talking about, right? If government is going to work for the American people, it needs to get back to basics. And that means that we need to solve our chronic health problem, right? That's RFK Jr.'s real focus. And then you look at Pete Hegseth, right? What's Hegseth's real focus? Getting the DOD back in a place where it is focused on lethality and not a bunch of random issues. Like I remember one of the controversies a few years ago was like flight suits for pregnant women, or like pregnant trans. It was even crazier than that. It was like for pregnant transgender women. Yeah, and it's just like nonsense, right? And so people like Bobby Kennedy can recognize that. And of course, so much of the Doge mandate and the Silicon Valley dissidents that have come over to President Trump and the right of center are focused on exactly these issues. Now, a lot of people have taken issue with like efficiency being the primary purpose of Doge, right? The logic is, I don't want government to be more efficient if it's persecuting me.
No.
But efficiency is like a second order condition to like actually pursuing some substantive good, right? So you can't have something that is efficient and it also be oriented towards evil. That's just not what efficiency actually is when we look at how it ought to be used and was used before all sorts of modern philosophies kind of perverted the term.
Absolutely. Well, something that I think has been getting more efficient across social media platforms is this idea of community notes. They are slowly but surely becoming my favorite source of entertainment. When I say like I used to scroll TikTok and now I scroll looking for community notes because they're just better. There's something so fun about watching someone just get dunked on. It's epic. But Bank of America this past week put out a statement about politics after Donald Trump went to the WEF and ripped the CEO of Bank of America for allegedly debanking conservatives. And Bank of America put out this whole post saying, like, we serve more than 70 million clients and we welcome conservatives. We would never close accounts for political reasons. We don't have political litmus tests. And then community notes came in from out behind and just like dunked on them and said, hey, by the way, we had to send a bunch of letters from the attorneys general across the country because remember when you did debank Christian ministry groups? Remember when you did work with the FBI to profile conservatives as potential domestic terrorists? I'm like, what? Kind of to our point about Ben and Jerry's and like getting away from these politicized stances. I'm like, great, good job, you're moving away from it. But to me, this was like almost in a way what Mark Zuckerberg is doing. Like, I get you're trying to not be political because in 2025 it's no longer cool or trying to be a liberal leftist, but now I don't trust you because your move is just in line with the political zeitgeist, not in line with what you actually have for standards.
Well, and these people shouldn't be trusted. They finally have woken up to the fact that the base is made up of a lot of people hungry to take Mark Zuckerberg's company away from him, right? Like this is the thing that the right was not doing for so long, which was, if confronted with regulation, a corporation tends to behave more in the way that you'd like it to behave. This can be used for good and for bad. So if you're a social media platform and you're deplatforming conservatives, and we know how important the digital public square is, having a vice president in J.D. Vance who has been very outspoken about putting the big tech corporations on notice, and a President Trump who knows full well the pain and the discomfort that goes with getting deplatformed, debanked, etc., they all of a sudden want to change their tune a little bit. And this is like the origins of debanking. The origins of debanking, it started during the Obama administration on an operation called Operation Choke Point. This was the FDIC predominantly going after it. And it was also like overseen in a tangential way by the Department of Justice. So the DOJ knew exactly what the FDIC was doing in Operation Choke Point. And the whole point of it was to basically make it impossible for financial institutions to hold accounts for gun and ammunition manufacturers. And so this was targeting political enemies of the Obama administration through financial regulation. And when that happens, right, there's all sorts of constitutional questions that come up. The Supreme Court has previously ruled that the government cannot use private entities to accomplish what it otherwise couldn't. So basically, it's not the government's policy that you don't get to say anything anymore in the digital public square. It's just Facebook's policy. Well, how did Facebook make that policy? Okay, maybe the government suggested that they make the policy or else all hell would rain down on them. But never mind that. It's just Facebook's policy. The Supreme Court has said moves like that by the government is certainly unconstitutional. And this is a very similar move. It's just not focusing on big tech. It's focusing on banking. This is like almost crueler in a way than something that I think you and I are both very concerned about, which is the rise of a social credit system in the United States built off of the kind of Chinese model.
Truly.
And why do I say it's almost crueler? Well, in China, you kind of know the rules, right? Like there are clear rules. You're being observed 24/7, and that's terrible Big Brother dystopian BS. We all understand that. The reason that it's crueler is because these are rules that are in place that have no text, that have no guidance, that one morning you wake up and you have a bank account at Bank of America and the next you don't. And the reason that you don't is completely unclear to you. Maybe they say you were being tempted to engage in domestic terrorism or domestic extremism, and they'll never actually define the term and what that is. That's why it's a really kind of cruel twist on the social credit system. It's a post facto social credit system that debanking tries to impose, that liberal administrations try to impose. And it reminds me of de Tocqueville's Democracy in America when he talks about the type of tyranny that democratic republics are prone to. And it's a tyranny that disguises itself as liberty. So you are free to think what you want to think. You are free to hold your property. Right? The bank says, I'm not taking any of your money. I haven't seized your money. I'm going to give it right back to you, and you can do whatever you want with your property. But what are you now? You're a complete and total stranger among us. And those are the words that de Tocqueville uses. They will make you a stranger among them. And I think that is exactly what this program is about and what so many of the other censorship programs we've seen in the last few years is actually about.
You're right. It's this it's this cruel system that is being imposed on so many people, and that is what brought us into the political zeitgeist that we're in right now, though, is people realized that the game was rigged against them no matter what side of the aisle you were on. You couldn't pledge your allegiance to the Democratic Party of America and be saved by it. This was anybody that didn't toe the line and didn't toe the line perfectly. And I think that's ultimately what we saw, not just in the actions of the administration, because the Biden administration took a ton of similar actions to the Obama administration as well, but we saw it play out in culture as well. You said the wrong thing on TikTok, and it wasn't necessarily TikTok flagging you or TikTok's AI. It was you got reported for saying something that was mean. It's just like you don't understand the rules of engagement until the consequences are already there.
Yeah. PayPal had a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League, which is like world famous for this tactic, which is like we basically create a term, we refuse to define the term, and then any institution, any individual we don't like, we will label them with that term and say that they did something. So like Bradley Devlin is a racist. Why is he a racist? Well, we haven't defined what racism is in our opinion, and we won't tell you exactly what Bradley Devlin did that's racist, but he's a racist nonetheless. PayPal had a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League to make sure that they identified people who quote unquote support extremism. What is support? Is support donating money to Hamas? right? Is it donating money to enemies of the United States? What is extremism? Is it actually Hamas, or are they taking a lot of liberties with that term and saying, well, they donated to, a local nonprofit that tries to help out
Crisis pregnancy center, yeah.
There you go, crisis pregnancy centers, right? And they refused to bend the knee to Planned Parenthood. We saw this with the Canadian truckers too. Like they had all of their bank accounts shut down when they went after Trudeau's government with this trucker demonstration. And the Canadian government was like, sorry, no recourse for you. This is completely within our rights. You're free to say and do what you want. You just need to end this illegal blockade. And then you can protest peacefully, of course. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get your money. You'll get access to your accounts again.
Oh my gosh, they're absolutely nuts. I've said it a million times. Brothers of Canada, I stand in solidarity with you. For purposes of time, we got to get on to our next story. My only reminder, Bradley, is por favor, please use the word corn instead of the word that we're going to talk about. My audience knows exactly what it is, and we just don't want to get demonetized. We're independent, So a Florida Democratic Party official sent child corn to an undercover cop and attempted to delete the material while hiding from responding officers in his attic. So his name is Matthew Inman, and basically he was messaging an undercover cop who pretended to have a 9-year-old child, and then the cop was pretending to essentially pimp out the fake child. Matthew Inman fell for it, resulting in further confirmation of this man's very predatory behavior on top of the fact that he had obtained and sent out corn. Now, what I found was so interesting was that, he's one of those, it's just like such a traditional thing. Local Democrat in Florida, president of Rainbow Democrats. Why is there a stereotype? Every time I read these stories, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this story for the first time and you sent it to me, I was like, why does it always have to be the most stereotypical thing that is going to make everyone who talks about the story look terrible? And this is all about the underreported stories, right? Why isn't this story getting any oxygen? It's a massive story. The leader of an LGBTQ group in Florida associated with the Democratic Party is guilty of having child corn on their phones and hiding like al-Baghdadi in his basement as the government raided his whole house. I mean, this should be getting massive attention. I remember the news cycle in the United States was dominated for 48 hours when a Hungarian politician back in, I believe, 2017 jumped out of a window at a gay sex orgy to avoid police, right? This was a massive story in the United States. And at that point, Hungary was not focused on by the right as much as it is now.
Totally.
Right? The reason you see profiles of Viktor Orban or stories about what the Hungarian government is doing is because the Hungarian government has built relationships with the conservative movement in the United States. That wasn't the case in 2017. And this story from Hungary dominated headlines for 48 hours. This story right now with this Florida man gets absolutely no oxygen whatsoever, and it's because exactly what you just said, right? They're afraid of perpetuating stereotypes. Well, Florida, Ron DeSantis has been so active in creating legislation to stop this type of grooming, whether it's in the classroom or in the public square. And they always freak out that it's going to be the end of democracy as we know it if, people can't get out there and wave their junk in front of little kids. And then when things like this actually happen, radio silence, absolute radio silence.
Absolutely. And I think that you brought it up perfectly, because it's not that he is gay. It's not that he is a Democrat. Those things don't inherently make you a bad person who would do something like this.
Well,
well, I just generally speaking, there are people.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
There's
Like,
fine
there are other
peoples on
people.
both sides.
Exactly. Oh, don't say that. I'm kidding. But my point I was trying to make is a lot of the times the reason why you see those two things and people attempt to conflate those two characteristics with people who tend to be peddlers of child corn, it's because those groups inherently, especially Democrats with their targeting of young people and activism, and Rainbow Democrats in which they target younger kid groups in order to push this propaganda, it's not necessarily that you are those two things that makes you that way. It's that those groups inherently associate themselves with really young people. And so it draws people who are very creepy to those groups. And I think that must be a question that Democrats really do have to get to the root of if they want to, root these people out of their cause and out of their systems, because you can't just keep attracting pedos to your associations. Am I wrong there?
No, I mean, it's absolutely true. And they like to say that this is all like Reagan administration era myth making. In fact, this
No.
is one of the oldest stereotypes in the Western canon. There are, like, on the Senate floor in Rome, like, Caesar was called the wife of every husband and the husband to every wife. He was accused of being the catamite of King Nicomedes, all sorts of things. I mean, this is a really old kind of Western stereotype, and it's not like a lot of there's this rewriting of classical mythology and the classics as well that say, well, everyone in Greece was kind of doing it with everybody. Not actually true. And the thinkers that they like to say were okay with this type of behavior actually weren't. Aristotle has a very clear esoteric message talking about what's going on in schools of philosophy where older men are grooming or abusing younger men. And he's pretty, he slyly but very forcefully says that stuff's not okay.
Yeah, well, this rewriting of history also has people being like, Jesus was trans. I'm like, I can't.
Yes, Jesus was a woman from Gaza. Yeah.
I can't with the insanity. Speaking of literal insanity, there's this video of Selena Gomez, the actress. It's gone so viral, and I didn't really want to talk about it, guys, but you have asked me, so ye ask, ye shall receive. And she's been crying about mass deportations taking place across America. Let's watch this.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. I don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
I mean, sobbing with your phone out, first great thing to do. You solve so many problems doing that.
The script writers haven't gotten any better for this season of Wizards of Waverly Place. I totally understand why Selena dropped acting and just stuck to singing after her stint at the Disney Channel. The children. I mean, there was better writing in the shows that we watched of her growing up as kids, even with the canned laugh track and everything going on.
Wizard slaps. I rewatched that during COVID. That's just good.
And David Henry, Catholic King,
Yep.
shout him out. He's MAGA, I think.
For sure.
But like, the children. Which children are you referencing, Selena? Are you referencing the children who were victimized by these criminal illegals who are now getting kicked out of the country? And are you sympathizing with the 300,000 migrant children that the Biden administration just misplaced over the last 4 years? Oh, you're not? Okay, shut up. If you don't make a video about those children, you have no leg to stand on when we're deporting criminal illegal aliens, even though they might have children running around this country. You have no leg to stand on whatsoever.
Yeah, and to your point about this goes back to our conversation about debanking and everything, and to this story. Definitely feel like sometimes I feel like conservatives must have like special news or special brain power to debunk a lot of the stupidity that you see online. And I know we don't. Like, you could literally just go to the White House website and research this for yourself. So I fail to understand how someone with so much wealth and power can be so ill-informed about everything. It seems like just neglect of the brain.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the hallmark of the ideology, though, right? Is it like history, facts, everything is used as a cudgel to hit your political opponents over the head with, right? Like, once you are brainwashed by the group identity politics, postmodern worldview, all of that does not matter, right? Like, any performative act to regain the power that you have lost is totally above board. And not only that, it's true. It's like quote unquote true, because as long as you have the power, right, you're the one who gets to dictate truth. And that's what Selena Gomez and a bunch of these other megastars are trying to do when they come out against any sort of Trump action. This is actually a really interesting commentary on the direction of the Democratic Party, though, right? Like, we talked about James Pogue's article previously. We talked about the New York Magazine article. They were in James Pogue's article, is like they were too busy courting Beyonce and Taylor Swift to actually figure out where kids were going these days, right? Like what are the youths actually doing? Like, are they hanging on every word that Beyonce and Taylor Swift says? Like, no, not unless they have a new album out, right? They're getting their news from TikTok influencers or scrolling on Reels or whatever.
Hey, we're not the first.
Yeah, but Selena Gomez like fits perfectly into that mold, right? The Democratic Party is such a status quo elite institution now that it needs these types of characters, which what they think is massive cultural cachet, when in reality, like, they don't. No one's really cared about Selena Gomez. I think the only Selena Gomez related headline I've seen in the last 5 years is like, why the hell is Selena Gomez dating Benny Blanco?
Valid question.
Valid question completely, but that's the only kind of credibility that she has at this point. And so when you become an agent of the Democratic Party, when you kind of imbibe completely of this, and it doesn't matter what the statistics are, it doesn't matter what the facts are, you're just going to go with whatever can make your group more powerful. That's why she says so clearly, my people are being attacked. Your people? Are you a citizen of the United States? Right? Do you care about Lake and Riley?
Mexican and Italian. Like, right. We're getting rid of all the Italians. If so, Chris Cuomo would be the first to go, not you, Selena.
Well, hopefully they don't get rid of all the Italians. My people have been through enough.
I'm kidding. Okay, so before we wrap up today's show, I want to play one final game. It is called Is It Real or Is It Satire? Where we watch and react to stories that make us wonder, is that real or is it satire?
Is it real or is it satire?
You cannot be serious!
Okay, a singer-songwriter has tried to single-handedly end racism with this beautiful tribal chant. I don't know if you had a chance to hear it, but...
Black and indigenous people of color. Black and indigenous people of color. Lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, and queer. Lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, and queer. Asian American Pacific Islander. It's giving the same vibe as that scene in Wolf of Wall Street.
That's what we gotta turn it into. That's what we gotta turn it into. We just have to ignore this woman completely.
Oh my gosh. Why? Like, what possesses you to make that video thinking, you know what, if I just say every race and gender, I'm gonna solve racism and sexism?
Yeah, Physiognomy Check says this is real. This is not satire. Like, where
Sadly.
she probably lives somewhere in Vermont. Like, she's never seen a Pacific Islander in her life. This is like classic white liberalism, right? Like what should we do? I don't know. Let's get everyone together and sing Imagine by John Lennon, and then the world's problems will go away.
You just hit the nail on the head. It's always the white bitches. Girls, get it together. Stop acting a fool, okay? You're not going to solve racism with your Lululemon leggings. So just zip it.
I loved how this is like the dollar store version of like liberal rich men north of Richmond. That's what it felt like. Where like she's like trying to be in the woods and all artsy. And it's like, I'm actually uniting with the spirits of Gaia, and we're all gonna come together in kumbaya. Meanwhile, you just get like one redneck out there being like, screw everybody in power, and the people love it. That's all you have to do. All you have to do is say, all these people in power shouldn't have power, and they should definitely not have power on the basis of their race.
You're 100% right. I had so much fun with you today. If other people loved hearing you yap, where can they find you?
Yeah, check out Bradley Devlin at Bradley Devlin on Twitter. Check out the Signal Sit Down, where I sit down with Washington insiders who know a whole lot more about the policymaking process than I do, and we try to figure out exactly what's going on in Washington, D.C. It's your government. We got to take it back. And of course, check out the Daily Signal transrural.org. We have everything that you could possibly want to keep you up to date on what's going on in the grassroots level and also what's going on in Washington, D.C. with awesome analysis, commentary, and breaking news.
Absolutely. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. If you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the ice cream emoji as an homage to the Ben and Jerry's story at the top of the show? See you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.